What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the stream. Welcome back to the Phoenix channel. If you liked the content, consider hitting the like button, consider subscribing, consider leaving a comment, because believe it or not, that actually helps me improve, become a better curator of content. And I actually enjoy reading the comments, good or bad, eggs on my face. It's all good. Uh, but I do know that you got to show up to improve. And I've never done anything in my life. So actually thinking about this today, I've never done anything in my life where I've worked really hard. Pretty much every day. Along with other things I'm doing, and good things haven't happened. So, actually showing up is core to being successful. So I'll continue to remind myself and anybody who watches this video about that. But in any event, what I got up here is a Stripe, basically the workflow or the integration flow of a payment solution for basically integrating fiat on ramp to an application. This particular solution we're looking at right now, before we do the demo, is for React Native, which is solution or stack that Facebook released and is available. It's open source. And so I've, started to dial in and focus on React Native type technology to develop an application I'm working on. And so I thought I'd discuss what I learned today about integrating Stripe for my payments, at least in this test framework I've developed and I'm leveraging Stripe for. So on the left, kind of takes you through the customer journey and really the payment journey, starting from the customer, going to a page or providing card details and finalization of a payment. That obviously hits our front end, and that information is ultimately sent to our server. So we send that order information. Server recognizes that, verifies the payment, and returns back what's called a payment intents, which is really with an object that includes the client secret, and that's unique for that particular request that had been made to the server. The server actually, is then ultimately making that post request to Stripe. So that flow is basically from our customer to our front end to our server, that then is sent and talked to Stripe via their API, that is then returned with a payment intent. And part of that object includes a client secret. And so now we're able to leverage that and provide those card details to finalize the payment. So we implement and call confirm card payment on here with the client secret and the card details. And there's an attempt for payment. And then we either get a success message or some kind of an error. So that's the overall process flow. And, I should mention that the reason why this is important is because, as builders in Web3, or really just anybody who's making a startup or an application, one of the first questions you're asked is like, well, what's your business model and how do you make money? So naturally, you need to have a way to bring on to your application. I don't care what application it is. You need a way to bring fiat or value on your app and off your app, and that probably involves some kind of AML KYC, regardless if you're making distributions of value. So, from my perspective, there is maybe some advantages inherently with using some of these, what I consider core solid API fiat, solutions that have been around for like a decade plus, right? Rather than try to reinvent my own wheel, try to reinvent and hope my security is adequate and fine. In some respects, given the pool of users, if you compare users that say have a credit card, have a banking relationship versus crypto users, and which users might want unique incentivization schemes that leverage blockchain technologies, but maybe aren't this speculative token type of cowboy behavior that we're all used to. And so that's the niche I'm particularly focused on here is the development of software stacks that leverage blockchain technologies as ledgers that provide radical transparency for, say, a company that um, basically is set up in this way. I mean, we haven't really seen a lot of that yet. So, what do those look like? With the blending of workers, consumers, and owners. So, in any event, let's go to the demo, shall we? So, what I'm going to show here next is the an Android emulator, and I use this primarily just to test out code. And so what I did is I implemented on my backend Node.js. It's on a port 3000, and basically it's just sitting there listening for different requests that come in. So I established all these routes for Stripe and other kinds of requests that my app, requires. Maybe talking to various databases like think MySQL, think about maybe even other types of calls that might interact with the EOS smart contracts I built, and basically return that request back to my mobile front end. In this case, my React Native, either on Android, which I'm primarily focused on right now, but also iOS. And the reason why, React Native, at least on paper, has maybe some advantages is that it offers some solutions, at least from a code perspective, that allow you to leverage that code base you're building for both platforms, both operating systems, allegedly. Um, so anyway, I got up here a very simple interface. We have a field for name. Uh, I haven't really made this formatted in the way I would for an application. This is just showing you the very basic functionality of how this works. And also in the code below, I will provide some resources for Stripe documentation if you're interested. Also, if you're interested in connecting, you have any questions about this, maybe you want to implement it for your app, maybe you want to collaborate and you have an idea. I'm all ears. That's kind of what I'm doing by making these videos. I'm looking for opportunities to build within the Web3 space. Obviously, I can't build, I can build an app on my own, but it would be much more fun to join a team or maybe someone who has a startup. And so I'm looking for those opportunities, especially within EOS, but really, anywhere. That's really one of my goals in making this content. So if you know somebody who could use my talent, please have them get in touch with me. I'd love to learn more about what they're building or what opportunities there might be. In any event, what you have here also is a card number field. And so Stripe provides, if you guys are familiar with it, Stripe provides some test numbers for cards. In this case, the eligible valid number we have is 42 repeated all the way through, and an expiry date of 1034. And then we can put anything for our CVs. I will end up, shrinking or sizing this down so that the numbers and the CV and the expiry date all fit on the screen, as would be usual. But for now, I've added the numbers, the date here, the CV, and my zip as shown. So now that that's completed, I can go ahead and hit submit. And if I hit submit, you're going to see it's processing, and then I get the payment successful. Now, you might wonder, well, first of all, this is really simplified because in an actual application, well, one, this would be a profile for the users that Stripe offers through this API. So once you set up this information for the client, it would be available via the API for your app to use. The other piece of this, though, is that it would be, obviously formatted in a much more sexy user interface for the user. So don't let this imagery fool you. But you might ask yourself also, well, that how do we know that it's actually been processed? And so Stripe actually offers, or makes available to anybody, this interface here that shows, um, basically updates in real time. So you could see, success, or pending, but you can go through here and see these. And then also obviously your code callback, right? Your callback in your call to that API also gives you a status message, success, and it gives you an ID, and that's actually linked here. And you can actually use that ID to then query, the amount, and you can confirm everything, and actually share that back with the user as kind of a confirmation that either you got a certain set of their numbers, and you have it. Actually, you can't get that. That's super secure with Stripe, which is nice. I think that's an advantage, but you can show other things to them, and Stripe may offer, maybe the last four digits. So I like that idea because I don't want to have, you know super concerns that maybe my homebrew method is, I don't want to worry about a homebrew payment method for building an app. And so that's why I'm personally going about it in this way. There are certainly, other ways to go about this, but I think that um, that makes a whole lot of sense, at least to me. So I'd love to hear what you guys think. I struggle sometimes with, I think, the balance of, you know the capabilities that crypto offers, in a sense that, hey, it's this could be this radical, transparent, permissionless system, but in recognizing some of the current technical challenges with on ramps for users. I think about maybe my some of my siblings, or my mom, or just even friends I know, and I ask myself, in the current with the current tools out there, and all these nuances with how to interact with, these various systems and wallets, I just don't think it's realistic for even people with oodles of time to invest that time to make a few bucks. Most people have very short attention spans. They want one click, they want what they're used to. And, if they have the ability to have a side hustle, or gain access to some side income, maybe check out, and interact with assets, or games in a different way, they'll do that. But I don't think most people are going to want to go through 10, hurdles to interact with your application. That just, it to me, it's just not realistic. So, anyway, I thought I'd give my take on that. The steps to implement the Stripe API, pretty simple. You build yourself a node, backend, typically with Express, and you can make a series of routes that help basically handle backend calls, either for Stripe, or other purposes for your application. And so I went ahead and built that out, for my application. It's basically complete. And along with that, you want to make some .env files so that you can store the critical information away from your app, and add that file name to your git ignore, so that basically, if you upload this to GitHub, or you have other peers that look at it, you're not leaking sensitive information that could get you in trouble in some way later. Some hacker takes advantage of those keys and starts to steal client funds. On the front end, you want to, npm install the Stripe library. I will put links to all this information in the comments below. And there may be some slight tweaking there with, the interactivity with Metro. And that's just a packager for your JavaScript on your front end. But assuming you get all that, up and running, it really isn't too bad, in my opinion. And so this is something I'm realistically thinking I probably would use for my application. Um, and I do have a very basic flow chart that I kind of color coded that maps out the various roles between payment processor and um, and my ledger, very high level. But a client on the left there starts their journey. They find an asset they're interested in. They need to inject the money to get access to this asset, right? To change the logic in my application to enable them to get this permission. So they deposit, they purchase the lease for the asset. Um, those client funds are sent to my project custody account, for example. And on the ledger, say on EOS, there's a ledger reflecting that transaction, right? That activity that's done. So it's transparent to the customer, it's transparent to the owner, and it's transparent to any of the other players that are in this network so that everybody's aware of the status. They're aware of the maybe the frequency, right, of how often a particular asset is used. That can be very valuable for them um, as the roles are blended in this network, right? Whether they're a consumer, they're an asset owner, maybe they're a promoter in some way. These are all critical areas for this app. Now, at some point, the asset is consumed and there's a settlement post dispute period, right? There's kind of like this cooling off period where, think about Airbnb or other assets that you use. And there's a period there where either there's a dispute or, you know, the interaction, the transaction, if you will, is closed out. Once that happens, there's a, final deduction of platform and owner fees. Again, a small amount for the platform fees, and most of that goes to the owner. And but there is a EOS ledger update with the distributions, right? And so there's this record or accounting of um, this flow of funds that goes to these other role participants in this network, and those that are KYC'd, would get some income from this over the life of that asset being used within this network. That's kind of the idea. So at a high level, that's sort of how it works, at least the version one. Um, but again, definitely needed a fiat on ramp to sort of make this happen. So I kind of consider this like a 1/3 milestone on at least basic payments for an MVP. Um, I've kind of started to learn more about EOS contracts and getting actions set up and spinning off other actions based on those actions. So that's been a lot of fun. And obviously, the React Native stuff has been a lot of fun. So, yeah, I've learned a tremendous amount. I am looking for opportunities out there for, as I mentioned, for those that might be building or might have a startup, particularly in EOS or other Web3 technologies. I'm hoping to find an opportunity out there. That's really one of my goals. I think we're moving towards a space where it's going to become more important to have these kind of skill sets. And so the more exposure I can get to them, the more I can contribute to them. I think it's just that makes it even better. And I'm particularly interested in the technology side of things, the software development side of things, and also mapping out governance solutions for applications. I think that's another area that, especially the EOS network could invest more funding in, spend more time on. Other networks could as well, maybe developing a standard similar to what IEEE does, for their standards committees. So you have representatives from various entities, and I would imagine that networks themselves could start to come together and come up with a framework for how these things could be done, because there's such commonality with applications that are going to build upon these. So in any event, that's my little rant for today. Hope you enjoyed my video. Please hit the like button, consider subscribing, leave a comment. And yeah, this is Phoenix signing off. Stripe Payments. I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll talk to you guys next time. Peace.